Welcome back to Man vs. Meeple, the show where we talk about everything board game related. Today we're going to be talking about a programmable card game called Flag Dash, which brings you back to your elementary school days.
Capture the flag.
Of capturing the flag,
Absolutely.
That's right. So it is a 2 to 4 player game that plays in about 30 minutes, David.
Yeah.
Very easy to set up. You have basically 3 characters on each side of the line, and your goal is to go capture the other person's flags or to gain the 3 flags that the characters are wearing.
Right. It's a nice little, it's a simple little strategic game, and there's quite a bit of strategy in there, given how the cards and the priority tokens work together. But yeah, you're running around trying to capture flags. It's cool that you're not just grabbing one flag, but you have the optional, victory condition of taking a flag off of each character, which is kind of cool.
Right. So the game can be played as a 2-player game, in which one player controls all the characters, or you can play as a team game in which each of the teams, one player will control one of the runners, the other player will control the other runner, and then they will both control the defender, so to speak, at the same time.
At its heart, it is a head-to-head game,
so
it's a great 2-player game, but yeah, you can split it up that way if you have more.
So you have a board in the center, and on the board you have your characters, which are predetermined where they will set up. Each of the characters are represented by these tokens here, and they have a coordinating card. And on that card, you have little flags, which represent their color, so to speak.
Right.
You also have the flags that represent that team. So this is the little white flag here, and he's got a red flag behind his defender. You have tunnels, which you can use for quick transportation.
Something I never had in my games of Capture the Flag when I was a kid. Right. But yeah, those are very cool. And then the last thing is the walls here, which, this is the basic setup, but there are different ways you can set up the board, and there's even another side of the board, too, but you can put the walls in different places.
You also have boost tokens, which will allow you to do extra movements outside of your normal movement in the game, and then there's a whole variety of other tokens that you can use in the game for variants. So the idea behind the game is that it is done simultaneously.
Right.
Each player will start off with a hand in the basic game of 7 cards. They're the same 7 cards for both teams. These cards represent 4 movement cards, which are your up, down, left, and right, all orthogonal. You have a push, which will allow you to push other players away from you 2 spaces. You have a flag card, which will allow you to either pick up an adjacent flag, or to pick up a flag off an adjacent opponent.
Right.
That's basically stripping them of that color and putting it onto your card.
And then the last card is probably the favorite, is the repeat.
Yeah, and that allows you to repeat a card that you've done previously in the round. So it's always going to be the second card that you play that turn. So what's going to happen is each player is going to pick 2 of those cards, and they're going to lay them face down in front of them. Now, the next part is that each player also has 7 tokens.
Yeah, these priority tokens are really cool. We'll get into what the cards do as well as the tokens, but the tokens you're going to place face down on top of each of your cards.
Right.
Now, on the face of these things, there are numbers, which are basically the priority in which things are going to play out.
Right.
But in addition to the number is basically another sort of variant on the action.
Right.
Some of them are just play the card that you've played.
Right.
Some of them are play it times 3. So you can repeat that card 3 times. There's another one where you can play the card and take a boost token.
Right.
So this all comes into play with the strategy where you want to maybe gather a couple boost tokens for a future turn so that then you can move a little further on your next turn and things like that.
That's right. So what's going to happen here, and I'll go ahead and show you guys a quick example. What will happen is that each player will place 2 of their things, and then they'll put a token on top of each of them face down. My opponent would do the exact same thing, and then we reveal the first the token to see who takes place first.
Right.
You're going to flip over the card and see what it does. In this case, this is a move forward, and I also get a boost. So I could pick one of my players and move that player forward. So, for example, I could move my green forward 1 space. And we'll keep going around the board. Now, the trick is, once all players are done, these priority tokens go away.
Right.
And they're going to go off to the side of the board. Your cards come back to you, so now you're going to have less tokens. And the only way to get those tokens back is to play the number 7, which is going to make you go last in the round, but it gives you all your tokens back.
It's kind of that refresh token. There are other games like this that we've played where you play just cards, and there's always that one card that lets you refresh and take all your cards back. This one adds the tokens, which is kind of the cool aspect, in my opinion, because it gives you sort of two variables to consider. You're getting your cards back, so you're going to be able to move around every single turn and do what you want.
Yeah.
But it's those tokens that come into play to add that extra layer of strategy.
Now, we said there's 7 basic cards that you'll have. You will also gain additional cards or additional tokens depending upon the characters that you're playing and if you're playing with those rules. Each of the characters has their own special abilities. You have guys who have lassos that can pull people. You have a snare.
Someone who can jump. And then this guy has a shovel. That's for the construction worker. And he can actually, his ability, for example, is he can dig holes or move holes on the field. So kind of change things up. And the holes are tokens, obviously, that can be moved around.
Yeah, and the 2 other players that don't have cards that go in their deck have tokens that allow them to do special abilities as well, or priority tokens. So the game is played over a number of rounds until one of 2 things happens. If at any time one character on your team has collected all 3 flags from each of the opposing characters, that it signifies the end of the game. Or if at any point one of my characters goes across, gets the flag, and then returns back across his side. Now, the only rule to that is that when you have the flag, you can't use tunnels. It's a straight run at that point to get back across. So this is a purely no-luck game. It's all strategy.
Very
it's all
strategic.
Tactical.
Very strategic. I mean, like I said, you're not drawing your cards. You have your whole set of cards in your hand. It's up to you when you want to recycle your tokens. The game, I think, where you can get really skilled at it is where you're taking advantage of some of these characters' abilities. You know, if you're dealt these 3 characters, you need to understand, for instance, this character has a spy ability so that you can kind of put a priority token out that when you flip it over, it's a kind of a fake out. It allows you to see what your opponent's priorities are, and then you can play one. So there's lots of extra little layers of strategy there with the tokens and the special ability cards for the characters.
Yeah, it's all about trickery and misdirection on what the other players
Just
doing.
like if you're running in a field with, trying to get away.
I love the aspect that there is no luck in this game. It's purely strategic. It's purely tactical. There's a huge amount of strategic choices that you're making on your turn, which card to play, which priority token to play, and which character to activate with those 2 combinations of components.
Right, and it's a nice, tight little quick game. It doesn't drag on too much.
Yeah.
I mean, someone is generally going to win. It's about a 30-minute game. I can't imagine it going much longer than that.
You have any cons?
Cons. For me anyway, the opposite of what you like games with very little luck, or in this case, none.
None, yeah.
I always like a tiny bit of luck.
Sure.
I don't know that it's a con. I mean, obviously, it's a game, for like chess, for instance. You don't want luck in chess. And I could see a lot of people not wanting luck in this. But this has such a playful sort of presentation. I wouldn't mind just a little dash of luck in this thing.
I get that. I love the no-luck factor. I also like the variability. There's a ton of variants. There's flag decoys. There's storms. There's a hard mode. There's a rally mode. There's the option to use those extra cards or to use the abilities, to use the extra tokens. There's just a lot of going on. Plus, we didn't even mention I think you did mention there is another side of the board that you can play with. So.
That's the other thing, too. The components here are really nice. But both the artwork and all of the elements in here are really, really nicely done.
Yeah. All right, guys, that is Flag Dash. Make sure you guys make comments in the YouTube channel below. Subscribe to us. Please follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook and everything else.
Yep.
And we will catch you guys on the next Man vs. Meeple.
Bye-bye.
Season 1 of Man vs. Meeple is sponsored by TMG Games, publisher of great games like Yokohama, Guilds of London, and the soon-to-be-released Colosseum.